Hi, I'm Catherine Mora. I'm the head book coach and publishing director at Change Empire Books, where we help coaches, speakers, and aspiring thought leaders write beautiful books and get them out into the world. This is Cat's Book Chat, where every day I talk about topics to do with planning, writing, editing, and launching your book. Today's topic is how to get onto a podcast to promote your book. Now, podcasts, like any media, they're not here to promote your stuff for free. They're here to entertain their audience, to engage their audience, to provide value to their audience, and you need to fit into that if you would like to be on their show. Now, some podcasts will charge and some podcasts won't. It usually depends on how big their audience is and where they are in the process. Sometimes when they charge, they might be less fussy on some of the details because you're paying them to get on there, so you're basically paying for the promotion. And sometimes when they're brand new, they might be less fussy because they just need the interviewees. So there are lots of different variables, but in essence, it's not about you going on the show to promote your book. That will be your objective, but you need to have an angle or a hook that's of interest to the podcast audience for them to consider having you on the show. So a couple of important things are to really know the podcast that you'd like to go on to. Don't just blindly pitch every podcast in the world. You've got to research. So you've got to know your audience and then know the podcast audience and actually have listened to multiple episodes of the podcast so that you know their style, what the podcast interviewer or host is into, what their audience is into, what kind of topics they've done, what kind of topics have been done recently. And you need to have an angle or a hook that's in line with your book and in line with what you do, that their audience will actually be interested in. So, don't pitch something that's sort of health and fitness related if it's a business audience or whatever. You really need to know who it is that you're pitching and show the host of the show the respect of having listened to their show and be a fan of their show. It's really, really important because they would get a lot of submissions from people who have never even listened, and it would be quite obvious and probably quite offensive or irritating, and they just won't consider using you. So what have I got written here? Oh, yes, you need to find out your timelines. So one of the great things about podcasts is it can be used to help you in a bestseller campaign. And what you want is for your podcast interviews to all kind of hit the market in the week that your book comes out so that you can sell as many books as possible and become a bestseller. Now, some podcasts will batch record. So they might record a couple of months or at least several weeks in advance. So the week before your book's coming out, don't suddenly scramble trying to find your podcast interviews for launch week because it won't come together for you. You're going to need to plan, as you do with any media. Some media have a 3 or 4 month lead time, usually things like print media, but also it does depend on things like batch recording for podcasts. So do look at their timelines. And usually you'll have to email the producer, or maybe they might have a form to fill out depending on the podcast. And you need an angle, as I mentioned, or a hook of what you can talk about. You might even have 2 or 3 topics you can talk about, and you can say, here are 3 topics I can talk about. Obviously choose one which appeals to you. And then have a podcast speaker's bio or interviewee's bio. You can really call it whatever you like, podcast guest bio. And this mentions your experience, what media you might have been in before, what topics you can talk about, maybe some frequently asked questions, who your audience is and what the audience tend to be looking for. And then with your pitch, you obviously show that you know their show. You might mention some podcast episodes they've done and what you loved about them, that sort of thing. So really just show them the value you'll deliver to their audience. And then, of course, at the end of the interview, maybe even at the beginning or partway through, sometimes they will say, this is so-and-so, author of blah, blah, blah. And then they might say at the end, we'll put a link to the book in the show notes, and probably there'll be an affiliate link. So you can mention the ability for them to have an affiliate link to your book, which means that every time one of their listeners clicks on that link, the podcast host or the show will make money from that. As well as the way affiliate links work is that when someone clicks through to Amazon to buy, the person whose affiliate link that is will actually get a percentage of purchases from that person for 30 days afterwards, I think it is. So that means anything they buy on Amazon the next 30 days, that person will get a little piece of it. What else have I got mentioned here? I think that's about it, really. That's the main stuff. I hope that's helpful. Do message me if you have any questions about your book and if it might be a good time for you to write one at the moment. Drop a question below if you like. PM me. We can have a chat about your book. I'll drop a link below to my book writing and publishing checklist. And until next time, happy writing.